G'day. The first strategy in this series is going to be light. Yes, you can use light as a self-defense weapon. Now, because you're not in the room, you're not going to be subject to a very, very bright light, and one that has a very destabilizing effect. What this light does. Look how effing bright it is. If you were in this room, you'd understand exactly how bright it is. Look at that can. Jesus Christ. Exceptionally bright light, and it's actually tuned. Yes, you can tune lights to flash at a specific rate that really confuzzles the human brain. Not many people, after seeing that bright light just then, can continue to talk as I am. They'd be very disoriented, but some humans have a very, very low photosensitivity. And there are the very, very rare exceptions and genetic exceptions where some people have no photosensitivity. I'm not going to say I'm one of them, but I can confirm that I definitely have an exceptionally low photosensitivity. It's got to do with particular genetics. There are few places on the planet that exhibit the same bright and glary environment that you find on Malta. So there are only a few hundreds of thousands. Today there's just 500,000 people that live there, which is still a sizable population. It's almost the population of Tasmania. So there are only few human beings in total around the world that have been exposed to an environment similar to Malta, where there's great glare and great heat shining against a particular texture of stone and mortar. So anybody who's been to Malta knows there's a very, very unique effect with colours. It's just it's bright like no other place. That's why a lot of Maltese people have very, very dark brown eyes. It's a genetic. It's an evolutionary mechanism. It's a genetic strength. So eyes can choose to go one color or another depending on what their genetic information has. Most oftentimes, the genome will say we need dark eyes for this environment. So the dark eyes come about. In our family, we've got very, very dark brown eyes, darker than nearly all Europeans, darker than all other Europeans with brown eyes, such as the Spanish, Italians, and etc., because of the unique environment you find on Malta. So for me, that's why I have a low photosensitivity. But you're not going to be faced in a situation very often where the assailant or the person that you're up against has a Maltese ancestry. And I dare say that that's only the case for half or a quarter of Maltese people, just because many Maltese or people of Maltese heritage exhibit a low photosensitivity because of their genetic compensation or their genetic strengths, doesn't mean all other Maltese people are going to have it. I know a lot of Maltese people or people of a Maltese background who are fair, who are very sensitive to light and so forth. But in our family, we're very non-sensitive to light, especially my mother. She could stare. I can actually stare at the sun. There aren't too many people out there who can just stare directly at the sun. I've done it so many times when I was younger. I can actually stare directly at the sun, and I do not advise you do that. My point being, a few people have low photosensitivity, but most of the population, they have a high photosensitivity, or a medium to high photosensitivity. As a matter of fact, most Caucasian people, because of the environments they are accustomed to, cold, snowy, etc., have a very, very high photosensitivity. There's an element there where there's a lot of glare in the snow, it's true, but that's not the same type of light that refracts or reflects off surfaces that you'd find in Malta, and it's certainly not the same brightness whatsoever. It's nowhere near the equator, so it's not a hot, blazing sun. Now, with those lights, you've got to get particular lights. You've got to get ones which have a very high lumen. They've got to be LED, because That's what most humans are photosensitive to. And you've got to tune the light to flash. You can't just shine it in the person's eye, because a person can still look down and actually adapt to the light. They can still see where they are, etc. When it's at like full lumen, like very, very bright, and it flashes about the same speed or frequency, I should say, as my light, the person, 99.9% of people will not adapt to that light. They will not acclimatize themselves. Their body will, their eyes and the visual cortex will not physically acclimatize themselves to that flashing light and that brightness. It'll just go on, and they will have to get out of that situation. And note too that the very, very, very bright lights you can buy in the market, and the ones, and tuning it to that, do not blind people. Okay, so that's one of the main points here. You're using something that will almost certainly incapacitate up to 10 people, depending where you're flashing it, as long at their eyes, mind you. So you have to actually point the torch at their head, not the sky. You can probably get up to 20 people if you're very fast and very good at it. So this grade of light, the white LED, very, very bright white LED that flashes, does not have the properties to blind a person, but it will certainly incapacitate 99.9% of people when it's shined at their face. So that's the whole idea. Even if they've got a gun, what are they pointing it at? They don't know where they're pointing it at. It's just going to be too bright, way too bright. That light is enough to shine the whole room like a disco. That's a very, very, very powerful and bright light I've got. It's only handheld, and it's tuned very, very well. So for that thing to be shined in an environment, you're going to be shooting or stabbing or doing anything if you're the assailant, but you're not going to be aiming properly. You're going to be blinded. And that's your go-to light. Light is your best friend when it comes to self-defense. Again, I'm giving you the user-friendly version of this. It cannot blind a person. It cannot kill a person. It cannot do any of those things. There may be, however, there may be the rare exception where someone does suffer from epilepsy or has high photosensitivity, but then one asks, what the actual fuck are they doing, waving a gun at you and stabbing you and trying to stab you? So on your part, you're not doing the wrong thing. If they have a torch shined at them for that reason, then they're doing something wrong. So that's why I've decided this is a user-friendly video and acceptable, because you're using it only in self-defense purposes to blind a person. Now, there are other upgraded versions to that can blind a person. Okay, I'll highlight that again. There are other versions of that particular principle, of that strategy, or light, I should say, using a very, very bright torch that can blind a person. And it's actually got nothing to do with the brightness of the light. It's got to, the light has to be a particular brightness, but it's got to do with what color the light comes out. What many people don't know is that, well, some people do, but most people don't know there are different colors on a spectrum, and there are different frequencies in the electromagnetic spectrum. The electromagnetic spectrum is what gives rise to certain colors and wavelengths. When you select a particular color of a particular wavelength that the human eye is almost certainly never accustomed to, if I just slip that film, it's similar to it's similar to the filters you place in some cameras and some lenses. If I slip that filter into that into the face, see how this screws off? If I screw that off and put it underneath this glass and on top of that LED, which I can do immediately now, it's just a matter of shining it at you and permanently blinding you for life. Am I going to use that against someone who's threatening my safety and threatening my life? Fucking oath I am. But I'm not going to show you how to do it. I'm not even going to show you what color it is. Because if people know how to replicate that, they could blind people. So there is one part of the electromagnetic spectrum where if it's filtered into a very, very, very bright LED light, it will permanently blind you. And that's about 5% of 95% of the population. There are only about 5%, up to 5% of the population who can withstand that part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's what I was alluding to at the beginning of this photo with having a Maltese ancestry. It's that part of the electromagnetic spectrum that has hues in Malta. So that's why people with a Maltese ancestry will probably withstand the permanent blind effect and even withstand most of the blinding effect. That's why with me, I've got a very, 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 very low photosensitivity, maybe none. I mean, there's a time when I just stared at the sun for up to 10 or 20 seconds and my eyes didn't hurt whatsoever. I literally stared right at the sun just to prove a point. Again, that's proof that most people don't have the same genetic exceptions as other people. So from that understanding, it's pretty obvious that there are parts in the electromagnetic spectrum that people can't withstand. And that's how I got to that color filter. So people, if you understand color, if you understand hues and electromagnetic properties and everything like I have, because I've looked into it for over decades, I'm very good with electricity, you'll know exactly how to engineer a very small and basic filter of a certain color. And it almost certainly will, I won't say could, it almost certainly will blind you for life. And I don't think you want to be blinded in both eyes for life. I don't think anybody does. What basically happens is that particular hue, but reanimated or reanimated, that particular effect in Malta put in translated to that part of the electromagnetic spectrum, put into that filter. What actually happens is if it shines at your eyes, flickers at that exact rate that I showed you, with that exact brightness, if that particular hue, color, flickers at your eyes, what happens is when you see stuff, you're only seeing stuff because your visual cortex in your brain is being given information from your eyes. And there is a link from your eyes to your visual cortex. And your visual cortex, therefore, has links to every other neural pathway, all the other neural pathways of your brain, particularly your cognition, right here, your executive function. What 99.99% of humans do when something is a danger, an utter danger to the entirety of their brain, in other words, their life, is destroy whatever it is. Cut the link, in other words, absolutely destroy what it is that poses that threat. So with that color effect, with that filter being slipped in there and flashing at your eyes, your brain, your visual cortex is going to say, what the fuck? It's going to completely destroy all pathways that go to your brain, that give you all the information of color, give all the visual information. I'm not prepared to show anybody that, ever. You may know it exists now, but many people do. And even if you do know it exists, you've got to be close to a mathematical genius to work out what frequency it is. It's an exact number. It's an exact part of a scale, and you're not going to get it. You've probably got more chances of becoming a rocket scientist than getting that. So once you slip that perfect hue in, you're fucked. So if you can come at me with a rocket launcher, you can come at me with a grenade, but you're not going to know where to throw or aim at anything, because even if you're wearing a particular weapon grade, army grade protective eye protection, that's going to do fuck all. As a matter of fact, it's almost certainly going to magnify the effect. It only works on particular applications. So, my point in saying all this is attacking me in an urban survival situation, mind you. So let's pretend this is an urban survival scenario. Attacking me, is it really worth you being permanently blind for life? probably not. It's probably not. Do you really want to hit me with a fucking bat or stab me or shoot at me if I'm going to slip that filter in and permanently make you permanently blind for life? You're probably going to go, oh, no fucking way, I'm not going near this cunt. I like my eyes the way they are. No sunglasses, no glasses, no protective glasses, no army grade eye protection. Nothing's going to save you from that light and that filter. You're going to be blind for life if you try to attack me. But the point of that is, that's the mentality you've got to have, but just with the friendlier version I've shown you, without the filter part. You just know that if you tune your light, or buy a light already at that flashing pace, if you have a light like that and as bright as that, it's going to incapacitate most people, most human beings, almost certainly. Again, this isn't, when I mean bright light, I'm not talking about the general bright light, something you buy from Woolies or whatever, not something that says, oh, it's bright. I'm talking about truly bright light. I'm talking about, your stuff in lumens. I'm talking like 10,000 lumens bright. I'm not talking about a couple of fucking 100 lux or any of that sort of shit. I'm talking about really, really, really bright lumens. Now, it's been a while since I've looked into light and all that sort of stuff. It's actually been years. I did all this stuff ages ago, made what I needed to make, and that's it. I've had it with me ever since. But you've got to actually know how much lumens you're working with. So the lumens from this light is like 20 or 30 times brighter than the lumens from your typical bright torch. And then there are ones that are 100. I had another torch that was actually 3 or 4 times brighter than that. Oh, that other torch, even without that filter, if it fucking shined in your eyes, you couldn't see for about an hour. Most people, it would fuck you. It would fuck you sideways. So I wouldn't show you that one. That's not user-friendly. That's borderline. That's passing user friendliness. That could make you blind too, just from the fucking brightness of the light, not the filter. That could actually hurt your eyes, not the part of your brain that says, "Oh, this is a fucking foreign hue, quickly danger." Because the filter I was talking about, it's not the eyes that it actually damages. It's the chemical messages that your visual cortex sends to your executive part of your brain, because it's not used to that part of the spectrum. It actually sees it as outright danger. It doesn't know what's happening, and it thinks that everything's falling apart in the brain. It's like, when you squinch your eyes in the sun and then you see all this redness and it's like, you start to get dizzy. Now you know what I'm talking about. It's probably about 1,000 times that hue that I'm talking about. Imagine your brain sensing that at 1,000 times. It's going to shut down every part of your neurology related to your eyes. And yes, I'm actually prepared to use that filter if I'm under a particular amount of duress. And if you think, this cunt's dangerous, well, I've known this for nearly 20 years, and have I used it once? No, I haven't. I haven't had to use it. There you go. I haven't had to use it. So I'm not concerned. You can say what you like, but that's clearly, if I've had it for so long and I haven't used it once, then I'm clearly a responsible user, and I'm not going to teach you how to make it either. And if you watch my video before this, you'll clearly understand my gist. But going back to the standard light, when you purchase the light, because you can purchase them already made, you don't have to modify or do things yourself if you're electronic savvy like me. When you purchase a bright light, most often you'll get them over eBay. You're probably not going to find them in Woolies or even Bunnings. You'll almost always buy them on eBay. And they've got, if I'm correct, it's 10,000 lumens, not 100 or a couple of 100 lux lumens, whatever the fuck it is. It's like about 10,000 lumens, even more. I think there are even 100,000 lumens. You've got to really, really buy the brightest one. So you've got to research, and you've got to see that the torch you're getting is like a couple of 100 times brighter than even the brightest torch you can get from Bunnings. And then even that, you can probably get brighter ones. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about just your average torch from fucking Woolies or anything. I'm talking about the fucking torch I've got here, or some of the torches that are hard to find on eBay. And then on top of that, you've got to get it the flashing version. So it disorientates the person, because the brightness isn't enough. It can actually work on its own, because it'll hurt the eyes too much. I dare say it would almost certainly work on its own without the flashing. But when it's flashing, it's just too much for the eyes to cope with. It's just bang, bang, bang. The person is disoriented and it hurts the eyes. So it's a double whammy. And that's one of the surest ways to defend yourself. Is it going to stop you from... is it going to protect you from a nuclear attack? Is it going to protect you from being driven at or some particular things? Probably not. But then again, most people in an urban survival situation aren't going to face those threats. I mean, how often do you see somebody aim a nuclear missile at you or try to drive at you while you're inside a home? Not very often. So in an urban survival situation, 99% of the times, light is your best friend, if not 99.9%. Note how it's my style to make the first video the best one and the most suitable one. So when you look at my series on breaching, what did I use first? Kicking. It's a universal step. So what have I used as self-defense in this video? Light. There are other fucking things I'm about to show you that you'd go, wow, that's a fucking awesome idea. Why didn't I think of that? But that are user-friendly and that I can convey. But out of everything I know, light is the best. So this, even, there are things I can use with electricity, but they're not things I'm prepared to make a video on ever. But they're still not, well, they're effective, but they're too effective. I'm not going to go there. But lights are effective. Lights are the most effective thing because they will incapacitate you. You're not gonna beat light. You're not gonna beat the brightness of light working against your eyes. So light works. That's why I'm using light, because not only is it the best means for the average person in a civilian, in an urban survival situation, but it's also the go-to. It's also what I use. Except I go one further with the filter, as discussed, which will actually make you blind on the spot and forever. So it's not something I've ever had to use against another person. It's not something I fucking want to use. Absolutely. I hope to God I never have to use such a fucking thing. But if I'm under duress, if somebody's shooting at me and they end up in my vicinity, such as that time in 2014, they're going to lose their eyesight for life. And they may not know it then, but that's exactly what will happen to them. So he's shooting at me or trying to stab me or do anything worth it, even throw a punch. No, because you'll lose your eyesight. So I recommend that you never come near me when I have that light. I really do. But I also make this video clearly as part of this series so you can defend yourself if assailants or dangerous people ever try to attack you and you need to you need to keep yourself secure as well as loved ones.